All right, so we're working on the 395 right now. I'm putting a whole new top end on it. And I got my starting numbers. So what I'm going to do here is just piece little clips together through this build day after day until we have a video of the build. That's my plan. We'll see how she turns out. Alrighty, so let me go over the starting numbers and kind of give you a rough idea what my plan is. So, top end's on. I got my numbers, and that's 98 exhaust, a 120 transfer, and a 76 intake with 37 thousandths of squish without the base gasket. So that's all without a base gasket. Now, my plan here is, I think what I'm gonna do, so I'm looking at these, like the squish number. I'll run it down to 20. I'm fine with that. But that's 17 thousandths off. I'll just round it to 20 thousandths just for easy. And I'm just going to assume a 10 thousandth cut would be a degree on the timing wheel. I'm just making this assumption to kind of give me a ballpark figure where I want to go. So if I do 20 here and I don't want to take this past like 84, then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 50 thousandth chamber cut, then set everything, and see where my numbers fall, see where my intake falls really. I think I'm going to aim for around 83, 84 degrees, but I think in a 50 thousandth cut should get me close. We'll see how she does, but that's my plan. I'm going to start with a 50 thousandth chamber cut, and we'll go from there. Alrighty. All right, it's another day, and we're on the 395 working here. Let me spin the camera around and show you where we're at. Alrighty. So I just did the squish band. Now remember me telling you how the squish band gets kind of tiny whenever you cut on it? See what I'm talking about? Or the squish band gets kind of big whenever you work on it. That's what I'm talking about there. All right. So I think that might be part of what's interfering for getting a higher RPM. So I cut the squish band at a 1.5 degree taper, and basically I set the Dyno Joe's little chamber cutter up at a 1.5 degree angle, and then I took the old piston here and I machined the top into a 1 to 5 degree taper, and then I did the sandpaper method to get my final results. And this piston is just so I can use it in the future. If you're wondering about that little center there, my lathe doesn't like to cut the center out. That's why I have to leave it. I mean, it don't interfere for stuff like this, but that's another reason I don't like that lathe. It won't do those. It won't get all the way into the center correctly, if you know what I mean. But yeah, there we go. She's cut at a 1.5 degree taper, and we cut the squish band at a 1.5 degree taper. And we're gonna leave the piston flat and set the squish kind of tight. Probably 18 to 20. But we're gonna creep up to that and kind of check it as we go and see how tight it gets in there closer to the combustion chamber. You know what I mean? We'll see how she works out. I'll keep you updated as we get her done. Alrighty? All right, it's another day, and I got the squish set. So let me flip the camera around. So, yeah. I got the base machined, and the squish is set to be here. So I got the taper in it, you know what I mean? How I was explaining all that, and how I'm afraid that because of how wide the squish band is, it's kind of screwing with velocities. You know what I mean? Squish velocities. So I set the squish band at a taper, and I'm just keeping the piston flat, like stock. I don't plan on making any modifications to the crown of the piston at all. So what I did is I set the squish up with 18 thousandths at the furthest outside edge, and with that 1.5 degree taper, it put the very edge, like where it rolls up into the combustion chamber, that spot is at 30. So for the most part, we're between 18 and 25 for at least half of that squish band, and then it, you know, goes above 25 once I get past that point. Up, you know, it creeps on its way up to 30. We'll figure, you know, what's the halfway point between 18 and 30? What is that? So, you know, by the time I'm halfway across that squish band, she's 6 thousandths higher than 18. So what would that be? What would that be? Like 24 thousandths at the halfway point? So 18 to 24. So, you know, go from like 18 to say 24 thousandths, about halfway across there, and then 24 to 30 till you get to the center. That's the way I got the combustion chamber set up, or the squish band. So next we gotta do porting. We gotta do the grind work, which I haven't checked my intake timing. I should check that. All right, so I just checked my intake timing, and I had said before that I didn't want to go past 83, 84. Well, it is actually sitting at exactly 80 degrees. So if I clean that little bit of crud up in the intake port, you know what I mean? That gives me a little wiggle room. I'll probably do a degree or two just by getting rid of those crusties there at the bottom. So I should be good. I think we'll be good on the intake timing. And then we'll go through it and do the rest. Well, here, you curious about to know the rest of the numbers, where they landed? Let me check them. All right, I was getting ready to go over this, and I was like, you know what? It's pretty easy. We started at 76, and we went to 80. That's 4 degrees. So figure 4 degrees across the board. So our transfer would now be at 124, and the exhaust would be at 102. Correct? So that's where our numbers would be. And I'm probably going to change the exhaust number, probably leave the transfers where they are, but I'm going to do some changes there. Probably won't raise the primary and secondary. I am going to do a finger or a bridge or something. Haven't decided yet. And the intake, we're just cleaning it up. So if we, you know, lose a degree or two from cleaning it up, we're gonna lose a degree or two. I'm just gotta make it. There's some crusties in there, you know, I want to get rid of. So that's where we're at, and it's time to do some porting. I actually plan on putting the exhaust at about 98 degrees, about the same spot that we started with. So yeah, probably not going to see a lot of difference there. I think those numbers should work out though. The bridge or fingers or whatever. So I would probably put the bridge or the finger or whatever that I put in, I'd probably put it around 122. I could raise it later. I just can't, you know what I mean? Once I raise it to a point and I feel like it's too far, you know? But I'm probably going to put it about 122. Somewhere in that neighborhood. Unless I raise the secondaries a little bit. I could put the secondaries at, you know, 100 and... Well, it would be the primaries at 124, secondaries at 122, and then I could put the fingers or boost or whatever I do at 120. Right back to the original numbers. I may do that. That sounds like a better plan for me. So that's probably what I'm going to do. Just kind of stagger them a little. All right, we're on another day here, and I'm doing some grinding. You can see how I was working on the upper there on the right side. I haven't touched the one on the left. So you can kind of see the difference in there and what I'm doing in the upper. And if you look at the very top edge there, you can see the factory chamfer still there. So you can kind of get in, you know, I mean, get an idea of how much I actually raised it. What I did do is I widened it a little bit, mostly on the left side there. So just a little bit wider on that one. Now I got to get over here to this one and work on it. And the lower, there's what the lower looks like. And well, tell you what, let me flip it over. Get it out of here. So let me flip it over, get it out of there so you can kind of get an idea. Here's what the lower looks like from the factory. All right, there's our uppers and stuff. But yeah, that's what the lower looks like coming from the factory. There's the uppers. And that's what I have it looking like. So a bit less restricted. So if we're looking straight on from, you know, I mean, straight up from the bottom here, you can see right in there. And then over here, you can kind of see She's a bit less restrictive now. But that's where I'm at, doing some grinding on these transfers. All right, we're into another day of grinding. There's the exhaust port, what she's looking like right now. Intake. I didn't widen it much. Really hardly any at all. I don't know. There's not a lot of room there to play with your widening whenever you're on these ones. But that's what she looks like, the intake port. And you've already noticed there's fingers in there. I did grind in some fingers. I got them set to 120. The uppers, I really didn't raise them a whole lot. Maybe a degree or two. Just enough really to clean them up. I really didn't play with them much. I did widen them some though. But that's what that looks like. Here's what the exhaust port looks like on this side. Pushed it out on each corner and flattened her out a little bit. So I'm getting ready to get in there with some sandpaper and start doing the sandpaper work. 98 at the exhaust roof. Intake sitting at like, I think it's at 181 right now. Or not 181, 81. So yeah, I think the intake's sitting around 81 right now, and we're 120 at the fingers, and the rest of the uppers is sitting at like 124. I'm pretty certain I'm going to raise them to like 122, at least at the, you know what I mean. Maybe not all of it, but we'll see. We'll see how she runs like this, and then make decisions. So it's time to start hitting it with sandpaper and cleaning her up. All right, I think I'm just going to call that done for now. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm back into this thing. So that's the sandpaper work all done. Now it's time to clean it and assemble it. She is, what, the exhaust port's finished out at 600 grit sandpaper. And anything else that I sanded was done with a 150 grit. So, yeah, let's clean it, and then we're going to be assembling. All right, I'm almost ready to fire this thing up for the first time, so I figured I'd just turn the camera on. You know what I mean? You got to rebuild. So I didn't pre-lube the cylinder, and so I'm basically doing like a really, really, really heavy prime. Just, you know, mixed fuel. Just cranking it over. Right down the spark plug hole. Pulling it over slow at first, you know what I mean? Just getting her worked in. Now that I did that, you know, it's just basically me pre-lubricating it. But now I'm going to yank the cord over heavier to blow out the extra fuel. All right, throw the plug in. Choke it. Spark plug's in. Let's pull the cord. right, so there we are. The idle speed keeps loading up on me. I lean it out a little bit, it loads up. Lean it out a little bit, it loads up. So we'll play with that a little bit. I haven't, so if you remember whenever I did a cutting video before where I said the timing was too far advanced, I haven't fixed that yet. I still got to fix that. But yeah, I got to pull like 2 or 3 degrees out of the timing, finish putting her together, and it'll be ready to cut. So I think we're going to call that for today on this video. And then I'll probably give it a few more bench runs like this before I actually put it in wood. I can tell you it feels perfect. Like right now, everything feels perfect. It's not spinning up in the RPM as much as I was hoping. We'll see how that plays out though, because the tune could just be so stupid fat. It's 4-stroking like nuts right now on a free rev, so we'll see how she turns out once we start getting into the wood. She's capping out at like 13.4, I think it was 13.6 on the free rev, but that's the 4-stroke. You know, the 4-stroke is hitting. That's where it's hitting, almost like the limiter. You know what I mean? But we'll see how she plays out once we get to the wood, and see if she ends up being any better than it was before. On the bench, it feels better, but you know what I mean? It's hard to say until we actually put her in the wood. But right now, it does feel like it's a stronger saw than what I had before. So, you know, only one way to find out, and that's where we're headed to. So, catch you later.